college basketball season is over. The Kansas Jayhawks are your 2022 national champions, and Utility Sports is recording another NBA mock draft. Those are all things that are true in the world today. And I think now, since the college season's over, is another great time to bring a 2022 NBA mock draft. Of course, I feel like I put a lot of time and effort into these, so if you guys do really enjoy them, I know I'm posting them weekly now. As we get closer toward the NBA draft, I think it's better to have it as a weekly series. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, give me your thoughts in the comment section. Again, a lot of work goes into this, so I do really hope you guys are enjoying them, and give me your thoughts in the comment section, even if you disagree. I do read every single comment, and I think right now is a great time to point out that over the last month, our watch time has come from 90% non-subscribers. So if you're watching this, very possible that you are not subscribed to the channel. Please consider subscribing. We're up over 7,700 subs, and we would love to keep growing and keep pushing that number up. And it just takes one quick second from you to hit that subscribe button. That's all we're asking, completely free to you. And we'd really love to have you be a part of what we do here at Utility Sports. I feel like we're really collaborative. I think a lot of our subscribers, who, by the way, you guys have been killing it too, that 10%, absolutely awesome. I really do still appreciate you guys on every little bit that you do for the channel here. We can't do it without you. But for those who are not subscribed, we'd love to have you on board as well. Moving forward now into this mock draft, this is based on the standings as of April 7th, 2022. This video will come out April 8th. So I am recording this during the day, April 7th. So the games on April 7th at night are not factored into the standings here. So of course, some things could flip. But again, the mock, relatively accurate in terms of where the picks will be happening. Moving on now into another generic note, I am not including Shaedon Sharpe in this video. For anyone curious as to why, there are strong rumors right now saying that he will actually stay at Kentucky and play for Kentucky next season. Now, very possible he does decide not to do that and actually declare. If he declares, it kind of throws everything in a wrench, but he's probably going to be a top 10 pick, so you could, try and factor some stuff around that, move some stuff around. But just for this video, so I don't get any comments, Shaedon Sharpe will not be included in this mock draft. Moving forward into pick 1, and that's the Houston Rockets at a 20-60 record. So far, they've won 25% of their games, and obviously they want to start winning more than that. And I think the season's had a few bright spots here for Houston. The Rockets have been a very interesting team because they're starting 2 young guards. Kevin Porter Jr. moved to the point guard for the first time in his career, and they're in an interesting situation. It's all about getting front court help, though. And the thing is, when you have 2 good backcourt guards, Jalen Green specifically is the player who I think has immense upside. Last year, he was number 2 in my big board going into the draft, and obviously started the year out very slow. But I still think ultimately, when you look at him, the last month and a half of the season here has been more indicative of what he's going to be long-term for me. And that's going to be a premier scoring option. So in addition to him and Kevin Porter Jr., you need to add a player who is defensive-minded, and is a connector piece offensively. That's Chet Holmgren, one of the best passers in this year's class, not just for a big man, period. One of the best passers in this year's class. Very good in high-low scenarios. You could play him with Alperen Şengün, who's been awesome this year as well. If Christian Wood doesn't get traded, Holmgren could play with him. However, I do expect Wood to be out this offseason. And then you look at, the starting lineup going forward, where the Rockets still have pick 16 in this draft as well. You could probably address a forward still at that point. And the Rockets need to get way better defensively. They're giving up 118 points a night, which is the most in the NBA by almost 2 points a game. So they are just giving up points after points after points. They need to get more stops. You go out and get one of the best defensive players in this year's class in Chet Holmgren, who can switch out onto the perimeter, very agile. And you can also play him as a power forward next to Alperen Şengün. You have enough size, length, and physicality around Holmgren here where you're going to be able to get away with drafting him. I know there's going to be some concerns, and he's probably not going to be able to play true center right away. But with Şengün on the roster, it does give you flexibility. And I think Houston, they're going to be really well positioned here with the Holmgren selection. KPJ, Jalen Green, Holmgren, whoever you draft at 16, you still have Jae'Sean Tate as well, who I like. And then Alperen Şengün. I mean, that's a pretty good collection of players right there. It's about trying to add more talent in. And Holmgren, he's a unicorn, can defend. Watch him switch out into the perimeter in a pick and roll. Oh my goodness. Like, he can hedge 28 feet away from the basket and still get back to the rim and protect it. It's insane. So adding a player like this, I think it's going to have massive upside for their defense, and also offensively helps them as well. Pick 2, Orlando Magic here at a 21-59 record. So they are 1 game back from Houston, which means they're going to need Houston to win one of the last 2 games of the season. maybe won't happen. Again, Houston only won 25% of their games, but again, there's still the lottery here. So the lottery is going to shake everything up anyway. So I'm just going off of order here based on standings before the lottery. So pick 2, Orlando, and it's forward Paolo Banchero here from Duke. I think any Orlando Magic fan would agree. They just need more scoring punch. I mean, Cole Anthony's been their best scorer this year, and he's shooting under 40% from the field. So that's not going to get it done in the NBA, especially in the stronger Eastern Conference right now. Your best scorer can't shoot sub 40% and average 15 points a game and think you're going to be a good team. Paolo Banchero is going to be a player who gets into the league. He's going to be able to average 15 to 25 points a game within the first one to 2 years of his career, probably around 17 points a game as a rookie, I would guess, and then probably upward to like 22, 23 in his second season. That's what kind of offensive talent and firepower we're talking about here with Banchero. And when you add a player like him in, it gives you offensive identity. They can play through him in the post. Wendell Carter's been a phenomenal addition for this team. The Vucevic trade is looking genius because they have an extra first rounder next year from the Bulls yet at this point as well. So Orlando's in a really good situation. It's just about hitting on this pick here. And if you go Banchero, it gives you the offensive identity that this team is craving. I know there's, potential that they could look at a guy like Jabari Smith. I wouldn't even rule out Jaden Ivey for them, despite how many guards they have. If they believe Jaden Ivey's the best player, I wouldn't rule it out. But Banchero here, I think he's the most sensible in terms of what his offense and his half-court identity really looks like for the league. Pick 3, the Detroit Pistons here. And with Detroit, again, another interesting team. Cade Cunningham has come alive the last 4 months of the season. He's been the best rookie since Christmas, basically, with how many 25, 5, and 5 games he's had. He looks the part too. It's not just the numbers. The eye test is there. He hits tough shots. He gets his teammates involved. Cade Cunningham is going to be a star. There was a reason he was number 1 on my big board last year. And I think he's really played himself into, that appearance that, hey, this kid's special. Detroit's got something with him. And now here, if you're Detroit, you also feel really good about Saddiq Bey. You also feel good about how Marvin Bagley has looked. You also like Isaiah Stewart as another rotational big man. Killian Hayes has had some flashes against some bad teams in the last couple of weeks, but then when he's played some good teams like the Dallas Mavericks, he 1 for 7 in the first half type of performances. So again here, your question comes to, what do you think about Killian Hayes? He's only played about 85 career games. Is Killian Hayes the guy for this team, or is he going to be more of a rotational guard where he comes off the bench, plays 15 to 20 minutes a night? And that's where I think he is. I don't think he was worth the top 7 overall pick that they took him with. I still think he could have a role in the league, but if we're going to be honest here, you take the guy who I think can be generational in this class, and that is Jaden Ivey. If you want anyone to be, reminiscent of John Morant, this is the kid. Jaden Ivey is so fun to watch, and I think he's a perfect fit next to Cade Cunningham. Cade's a little bit bigger. Jaden Ivey's 6'4" himself, so you have a pretty decent sized backcourt there. And everything that Cade Cunningham isn't, Jaden Ivey is. Cade Cunningham, probably not the quickest first step, not the best burst. Jaden Ivey's got the best burst in the class. This kid can get downhill whenever he wants to. He can live at the rim. And the thing about it is, it's not just athleticism, it is skilled footwork. He knows how to use hop steps and gathers and euros. He can spin. He's got so much talent, and he's also capable of finishing tough shots around the rim. It's not that he's just beating people to the spot and finishing. He's finishing over contact, through contact. He's finishing around defenders. He's got the whole package when it comes to finishing, and he's also shooting 36% from 3. And I know maybe some people are like, whoa, 36%, that's not that good. Anyone who actually has watched this kid play knows he shoots 25 footers and 27 footers. He shoots deep threes and connects at a 36% clip, being the best player on Purdue, a team that played really, really well this year. Jaden Ivey, to me, is the best player in this year's class. Detroit gets him at 3 because of team fit. The Rockets and Magic, I deemed, were not looking for a point guard. The Pistons found one here next to Cade Cunningham. That backcourt is going to be scary. Pick 4, Oklahoma City Thunder here now on the board. Of course, they're going to be a team hoping for the ping pong balls to treat them right. But the way this mock draft has shook out, it worked out pretty well for them, actually, because they got forward Jabari Smith from Auburn, a player I think they would have really considered had they had pick 1 or 2 anyway. I think they're looking for a forward who can score the basketball, can step out to the three-point line and knock it down with regularity, and also is a really good perimeter defensive option. Now, Banchero, I know there's a lot of people in my comments saying that Jabari Smith's a way better defender on the perimeter. Yes, but I think Banchero is a better interior defender where he plays around size a little bit better. And for me, with Oklahoma City here, you need a little bit of both. You need someone who can defend on the perimeter, and you also need someone who can defend inside. Jabari Smith at least helps you on the outside, and he's going to be a weak side rim protector. He's not a great on-ball post defender, but ultimately here, I still think he's a phenomenal addition. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander needs offensive scoring help. Josh Giddey can do stuff with the ball in his hands, a really good facilitator, but they still need another scorer. And Jabari Smith here, dry, cut, and simple, is a scorer of the basketball, and that's extremely valuable here for the Thunder. Pick 5, Indiana Pacers here. Team, they're one game out of maybe having a top 4 pick, which would be interesting. And I think the lottery maybe would shine on Indiana in that case. They haven't had a top 9 pick, I believe, since 1989. The last time they had a top 10 pick, it was Paul George. So anytime they're up in this realm, they usually do a pretty good job drafting. And I don't think that changes here with forward/guard Bennedict Mathurin. It's an interesting scenario here in Indiana because you have to try and get a read on kind of what they're looking for. Because I think Miles Turner's there to stay. I think Isaiah Jackson's there to stay. Goga Bitadze is probably on his way out at some point in the relative near future. With Coach Carlisle, I just don't think Carlisle likes, a player like Bitadze really in his lineups as much. Jalen Smith looked like a pretty good find for them as well, with the trade with the Phoenix Suns around Torrey Craig. And then you look at, Malcolm Brogdon. What's his future there? There's a lot of questions right now in Indiana, and I had, pointed to that when they hired Carlisle, that said this roster just doesn't fit what he wants to do with the team, and they've really reshaped it. And I think Bennedict Mathurin's a phenomenal addition here as well, because then you have a nice young trio of Tyrese Halliburton, Chris Duarte, and Bennedict Mathurin. You have good combination of size, length, defensive capability. You add a lot of athletic punch here with Mathurin as well. I know his poster dunk in the tourney really put notice to a lot of people, but I've been mocking him this high pretty much the entire process. He's a top 5 player in this class. One thing I would like to see him do more is cut without the ball in his hands. But for a player to compare him to would be Tim Hardaway Jr., who found a ton of success with Rick Carlisle. And I think Bennedict Mathurin has similar traits here, probably a little bit more athletic, probably a little bit better as a ball handler, and probably a little bit better defensively even. So you're looking at an upgraded version of Tim Hardaway Jr., who was very successful under Carlisle. So I think here the Pacers get a really good player and a player who really fits what Carlisle wants to do. Pick 6, Portland Trailblazers. They've moved up to the 6th overall selection now, as the Kings have went on a little bit of a winning streak as of late. And for the Blazers, I'm targeting forward Keegan Murray out of Iowa. I think this just makes a lot of sense. I've been to a Blazers game in person this year, and every time I watch the Blazers play, even though it's in the middle of a tank season here, Portland, they just don't have enough forward play. They've been rolling some guys in there. I think Keljin Blevins has been playing some of the 3 and 4 for them. They just don't have the size and strength and physicality you need in the NBA to play the 4 specifically, and Keegan Murray brings you all of that. Plus, he has a skill set to step out behind the 3-point line, knock it down. He's very good on the offensive glass. And when you're looking at a player here to fit alongside Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, and the way this Blazers offense needs to run, you need to first of all find guys who are going to be opportunistic scorers, which Keegan Murray's the best opportunistic scorer in this year's class. Just, doesn't have a go-to move, but just consistently finds ways to score. He averaged 22 points a game this year without being, really a massive focal point for Iowa. It's not like they fed him the ball every play, which is interesting because Keegan Murray just found so much success based on his positioning, his IQ, and his decision-making. And I really love that for Portland here. And then the other thing about this here with Portland is he's a competitive defender. So you're getting a player who wants to play defense. And we know Chauncey Billups is all about the defensive end of the floor. And I think Portland here is a way better team once they add Keegan Murray in the draft. Pick 7, Sacramento here now on the draft board, and they're going to go ahead and take forward AJ Griffin out of Duke. For me, Sacramento badly needs shooting. You trade away Tyrese Halliburton, you trade away Buddy Hield in one trade. Those are your 2 best jump shooters. De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, they look pretty good together. The Fox and the Ox combo is getting the job done, especially when it comes to scoring the basketball and facilitating. The issue is the complementary pieces around them just can't shoot the ball well enough. For me, forward AJ Griffin, he shoots the ball phenomenally. He's shooting around 50% from 3 in catch and shoot scenarios, and he is someone who I think is a perfect complement because he's also going to be a competitive defender. This is a real upgrade for me when you consider the fact that you can introduce him into your starting lineup, probably move Chimezie Metu to the bench. I know Metu's a fan favorite there in Sacramento, had a really good season. But I think realistically, if you're trying to win a lot and get into the playoffs, AJ Griffin's a massive upgrade here. And I think he's a player that is a lock for the top 10. Could even maybe find his way into the top 5 if Indiana, per se, really liked him. I wouldn't rule that out, but I think here, 7th overall, the Sacramento is where it makes the most sense as of now. Pick 8, New Orleans Pelicans. Of course, they have a huge smile on their face after the Los Angeles Lakers have completely crumpled to end the season, 2-8 in their last 10 games. And the Pelicans are here to reap the benefits because at this point now, they have a top 10 pick because the protections on it was 10-1 goes to New Orleans, 11-30 goes to Memphis. So New Orleans very happy with how this has played out. And they're going to go with forward Ochai Agbaji. This is a massive switch up in my mock draft here from the previous mocks. And now this is one that I don't necessarily agree with or think should happen, but I think will happen if it falls down to this scenario. And that's Ochai Agbaji going to New Orleans. For anyone who's been watching the channel, you know I've been historically mocking Ochai Agbaji lower. The issue is he won a national championship. NBA GMs, executives tend to pay more attention during March Madness than they do throughout the regular season. And Ochai Agbaji to me is more of a Contavious Caldwell-Pope than he is a star. And I think that, you know, KCP's had a nice long career, and Ochai Agbaji is going to have a nice long career as well. Don't get me wrong. But I just don't think he has star written all over him. I don't think that there's any pathway to that. I think there's going to be players who are drafted after him that are going to have better, nicer careers than him as well. But in this mock draft here, Ochai Agbaji to New Orleans does make sense because you're looking at a team that has quite a few players that want to have the ball in their hands, whether that's McCollum or Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson, even Devontae Graham to a certain extent. Ochai Agbaji does not do that. He plays almost exclusively without the ball, very comfortable coming off of pin down flare screens. You can get him the ball in a variety of ways without him having to dribble it a bunch, which I think is a good fit here for New Orleans. It's hard to find a need for them. I don't think they need a forward. Obviously drafted Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, who's awesome. I love Herb Jones, by the way. I loved him coming out last year. And he's been great for them this year. And I think Trey Murphy's going to take a massive step into year 2 as well. I don't think they need forward, but I think that what they want to do is add another good player. And Ochai Agbaji just quite frankly is a good player. Pick 9, San Antonio here on the board. Of course, a team now that's in the play-in race. And I think they're going to have a nice competitive run against New Orleans. We'll see exactly how much damage San Antonio can do. But here with Keegan Murray off the board, I think you have to look big man. And they go with center Jalen Duren from Memphis. For me, what San Antonio is lacking right now is some real athleticism and physicality. And you get maybe the most athletic, physical big in this year's class in Jalen Duren. He's going to be a lob threat consistently, can protect the rim. And one thing that I think is going really under the radar about him right now that a lot of people in draft circles are not talking about is his capabilities of potentially switching out onto the perimeter and being a really nice option for a team defensively. He's way more mobile than Jakob Poeltl is. And this also gives San Antonio a little bit of flexibility if they feel like moving on from Jakob Poeltl in a trade, which they definitely did discuss at the trade deadline this year. Jalen Duren probably could step into starting center minutes rather quickly into his NBA career. Pick 10, New York Knicks now on the board. Knicks fans, hopefully you guys are enjoying the content. If you are, leave a like, subscribe as well. And here with New York, there's a few things you could consider. Obviously, the guard positions on my mind, though, and Johnny Davis falls to 10 here. This is a massive steal for New York. The Knicks get a go-to offensive player in the half court, which is something they need. The one thing here with Tom Thibodeau, I think this team needs to find an identity. You know, they have the kind of conflicting areas where Julius Randle kind of does his thing, and then Emmanuel Quickley and Julius Randle don't have good chemistry. RJ Barrett's kind of just on the side doing whatever he can do, playing great. But then it's not like they're running real offensive sets for him consistently. New York, they're just really stagnant and segmented. And I think that goes down to Tom Thibodeau just needing to be a better offensive coach, needing to find better offensive strategy for this team to win more games. But Johnny Davis is a player in his own right that even without strategy around him, without, you know, real consistent spacing, he can be really good simply because of his skill set as a creator. So I think here for New York, even with some of their issues, Johnny Davis fits perfectly into Thibodeau's defensive system, and then also can be an offensive system in his own right, just with his capability to score the basketball, even in tough situations. So for me, Johnny Davis, this is a massive steal here for the New York Knicks. 11, Washington Wizards now on the board. In Washington, you have to feel pretty good about what you've seen from Kristaps Porzingis up to this point. He's looked pretty good in his time with Washington. Of course, he won the Luka Doncic versus Kristaps Porzingis matchup the first time ever they had played each other. And Washington came out and destroyed the Mavericks in that game. So now moving forward, I'm going with guard Jaden Hardy, because if I'm, you know, Tommy Shepard in the position where I have to make a decision about Bradley Beal, and I have to try and figure out if he's staying or leaving. I have a little bit of concern that he's probably going to ask for a trade. So I'm going to take a guard here who I think has massive upside, Jaden Hardy. And it's crazy to me, experts, I'm going to say that in quotes, experts, have him going outside the top 20. Clearly, they haven't watched this kid play. Once he gets into private workouts, teams are going to be thrilled about what they see from him. He's going to be one of the best kept secrets. I played for the G League Ignite this past year and did not have the season he was hoping to have in terms of efficiency. But if anyone's wondering about efficiency, go compare his numbers to Jalen Green's numbers, who went second overall. Now, Hardy doesn't have the athletic burst that Jalen Green has and probably isn't as skilled as a shot creator, but he's close, specifically in the shot creating department. He is going to be a player who has the utmost confidence in himself. And if you're Washington, you're looking for a player that can maybe help bridge the long term. If you have any concern at all that Bradley Beal might leave, Jaden Hardy is the pick. Pick 12, Portland here again on the board. This pick comes from the New Orleans Pelicans. And remember earlier when we went with Keegan Murray, and here now at 12, we're going with forward Jeremy Sochan, which this might be a little bit of an eye raiser for Blazers fans. And let me explain why. Again, you find an opportunistic scorer in Keegan Murray. Assuming you keep Jusuf Nurkic, you've already addressed the center position. You don't need to take one this year. And your offense is going to be built around Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Jusuf Nurkic, and then maybe to an extent, Keegan Murray. The rest of the team does not need to be scoring identity players. In fact, you're probably going to want defensive identity players because Chauncey Billups knows how important defense is, and Portland's been one of the worst defensive teams this season. You need to get better defensively, and there's no better way than in this draft to draft the best defensive player possibly that we could see in the last 5 years. That's Jeremy Sochan. He's one of the most flexible, versatile defensive players I have ever evaluated. He is one of the few players in the world that you could say, okay, go guard a point guard this possession, and then the next possession we're going to have you battle down low with the big. You have to box him out. You're going to have to front him. You're going to have to do all these things. He does them all perfectly, consistently. Anyone who watches Baylor knows that they are a really well-coached team, and Jeremy Sochan got massive minutes as a freshman on a really good program and a really good team because of how smart he is defensively. I think his rebounding can come along as well. The comp I usually give him is Dennis Rodman, not necessarily for the rebounding, but for the defensive capabilities. He's versatile, and I think here if you're Portland, adding Keegan Murray and Jeremy Sochan, you get really, really dangerous defensively. The forwards are way better than they've ever been on a Damian Lillard team. And I think here, Jeremy Sochan, a really, really good option for Portland. 13, we got the Charlotte Hornets now. Hornets fans, leave a like if you're excited. And for me here, I think this is one that's been really consistent. I'm not just going to change it for change's sake. Center Walker Kessler from Auburn, he won Defensive Player of the Year in college basketball, and he deserved it. I mean, he's averaging like 5 blocks a game. He's the best rim protector in the nation, clearly. And if you're Charlotte, a team that was quote unquote very close to acquiring Jakob Poeltl in a deal at the trade deadline, you're probably looking for a Jakob Poeltl type player in the draft. And Walker Kessler is a perfect example of that. Shot nearly 70% on 2-point attempts this past year for Auburn because he plays within himself, plays within his role offensively, which, if you're Charlotte, you don't need any more offensive firepower. You need a guy to anchor the defense and protect the rim. And Walker Kessler does it better than anyone in this class. He is very reliable as a defensive anchor and a player who, once he transferred out of UNC and went over to Auburn, really, really elevated his draft stock. Was a player who I think a lot of people were looking at as maybe a second-round pick before the season started, and he quickly rose up to a lottery-level selection. Charlotte needs a center, and they find one here with Walker Kessler. Pick 14, the Atlanta Hawks here now on the board. And if you're Atlanta, given the fact that, some rim protection's off the board, Jeremy Sochan's not here, I opted to find a backup point guard because he fell a little bit in this mock draft. That's guard Ty Washington out of Kentucky. For a team that is so high volume pick and roll offense, which is what the Atlanta Hawks are with Trae Young, when he goes off the floor, they kind of lose offensive identity. And I think it really shows. So if you add a guard in here who can really handle the pick and roll, which Ty Washington can, he's the best pick and roll guard in this year's draft, outside of Jaden Ivey. Ty Washington's a really good pickup here for Atlanta simply because he's going to be able to facilitate the offense still. He can look for his. And the thing that he does different from Trae Young, Trae Young puts a lot of pressure on defenses from shooting the deep ball. Ty Washington is going to punish drop defense with his mid-range shot selection, which I really like here. It gives Atlanta a little bit of a different wrinkle, gives you another option to score the basketball, and gives you a little bit more of a missing element to your offense, which is mid-range shot selection, especially as Danilo Gallinari ages another year. Bogdan Bogdanovic gets a little bit older. You need a young guard who can come in here and put a little bit of pressure on the defense. I like Ty Washington here. It keeps their bench minutes alive, and I think Atlanta is really well suited with this selection. And that was the lottery here. If you guys feel like hitting the lottery, make sure to go to manscaped.com and use code utility20 for 20% off their products. They've got some really great products over there. And if you guys want to go ahead and get this product, I would highly recommend it. They shipped it out to us for free, and I have absolutely loved using the product. The Manscaped 4.0 Performance Package comes with the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 pictured on the left of your screen right now, which is really, really nice. I love that one myself simply because it helps prevent nicks and bruises with the guards it comes with, but also it comes with a nice LED light that helps you make sure you don't miss any spots and also helps you get high precision while you're taking care of your jewels. And then on the right there, you got the Weed Whacker as well, which is very nice for taking care of any gaps and holes. If you got any nose hair that lingers or anything like that, it takes really good care of that. So again, that's code utility20 for that. And remember, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code utility20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code utility20 at manscaped.com. It's time to throw out your old hygiene habits and upgrade your life. Moving on to pick 15, we got the Oklahoma City Thunder here. This pick comes from the Los Angeles Clippers. And with this pick, Oklahoma City already having grabbed, at this point, Jabari Smith, they're going to look for a center. And it's Mark Williams here out of Duke. This pick, same as the last couple weeks. And again, I'm not just going to change it for change's sake. This makes way too much sense. You give him an athletic rim running big who can protect the rim on the defensive end of the floor, pretty good rebounder, and you address pretty much all the questions that Oklahoma City had. You know, their front court play has been terrible the last 2 seasons. They haven't had guys who can play in the front court. You know, if you're relying on Derek Favors heavily, you're going to be a bad team. So for me here now, you add in Jabari Smith, you address the power forward spot, you draft Mark Williams, and all of a sudden you've got 2 really good, reliable big men that you want to play. You have good size and length and skill set and ability. And Mark Williams, I think defensively is really what makes the engine tick here for Oklahoma City, because you need to get better defensively. You need to get more stops. You need to rebound the basketball better. Mark Williams does all of that. And I think offensively also is a really good pick and roll big. So for me here, Oklahoma City, one of the biggest winners of the draft with Jabari Smith at 4, Mark Williams at 15. Pick 16, Houston Rockets here. This pick comes from the James Harden trade with the Brooklyn Nets. And now the Rockets here take a player who slid a little bit in this mock. I've been consistently mocking him in the lottery. That was forward EJ Liddell from Ohio State. I really like what EJ Liddell is as a player. And what he is as a player, if you're curious, is a rim protecting forward, which is pretty rare to see. He averaged about 3 blocks a game this past year for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He's a junior, so he's a little bit older, but he still fits the timeline here really well with Houston. He's right around the same age as Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. and Alperen Şengün. He's right in that mix. He's going to be a little bit older than those guys, but he's like, what, 1 year older? Like, it's not the end of the world here to draft a junior, especially when he's just a good player who can give you a little bit of defensive identity. I talked about it earlier with Houston. You draft Chet Holmgren because you need more defensive help. You draft EJ Liddell because you need more defensive help. You can play big, you can play fast, you can play strong, you can rebound the basketball better, you get way more rim protection on the floor. I mean, it just makes way too much sense. This gives you also a little bit of time where, hey, maybe you can play Chet Holmgren at center when Alperen Şengün's not in the game, because you have a physical forward here in EJ Liddell who can play the 4, can also protect the rim, and can also rebound the basketball. So I think here Houston gets way, way better. I like what their guard play is. Josh Christopher as well. I didn't mention him earlier, but I love the way he's been playing off the bench too for Houston. So for me here, if I'm Houston, it's all about the front court, just like in Oklahoma City. 17, Indiana on the board again. Remember, they went with Benedict Mathurin earlier on. And here with this selection, I'm going with guard/forward Malaki Branham, which now this maybe feels a little weird to Pacers fans because I've taken 2 guards/forwards at this point of the draft when you already have Halliburton and Duarte and Malcolm Brogdon. Realistically here for me, you're probably going to play a little lighter But the goal here is to play really fast and really offensive oriented. Malaki Branham had a really nice season. And the thing about this team, if you have Isaiah Jackson or Miles Turner, you have really good rim protection at the center spot. So you could probably get away with playing a little bit smaller, and specifically because Malaki Branham plays strong, Benedict Mathurin plays strong. So whichever one of them would get, indicated as the 3 or 4, I think both of them are very versatile and can play and guard multiple positions. Branham for me is a little bit slower than what you'd want from a lottery level selection type of player. So for me, he'd probably end up being the 4. And he's a little undersized to do that in terms of actual height and stature. But Indiana's got enough bigs already where I'm not worried about that specifically. And if I'm drafting for Indiana, it's all about talent acquisition, trying to get the best players I can. And Malaki Branham, quite frankly, fits that bill here, 17th overall. Pick 18, we got the Chicago Bulls here now. And they've been in a tailspin. The injuries to Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso really hindered what this team was going to be. They were on such a roll before some serious injuries hit this team. Of course, they had played the whole beginning of the season without Patrick Williams as well. So if you're looking for a team that can make a massive jump next year just by being healthy, Chicago's really on everyone's radar. And here I'm going to add a little bit of depth to this team as well. With all the centers that have gone, 4 of them up to this point, if you include Chet Holmgren as the center, they don't really have a center option here at 18 that makes a lot of sense. So instead, I'm going to go with a forward who is a really nice connecting piece, and that's Kendall Brown from Baylor. All year long, pretty much, I've been mocking him over Jeremy Sohan. But come tournament time, I think it was clear that Sohan's just the better, more NBA-ready player up to this point. But Kendall Brown could be a nice contributor off the bench, specifically because he doesn't need the ball in his hands to be successful. He can catch and shoot, knock down threes, but he's also going to be someone who can attack closeouts well and moves the basketball. He's not going to be a ball stopper by any stretch. So when you're Chicago and you have 2 talented scorers on the perimeter in Zach LaVine and also DeMar DeRozan, you also have a talented scoring big man in Nikola Vucevic. You don't need a scorer here at 18. You need a connector piece, and that's Kendall Brown here. 19, Minnesota Timberwolves. What a season for Minnesota. Chris Finch, let's all give him a round of applause quick for what a job he has done with the Timberwolves, a team that had been habitually in the lottery. You see them now at pick 19, so a lot of credit to them and the way they've turned their franchise around. I'm going here with a player who I think could be a pretty nice steal at this point in terms of where the value is, and that's guard Dyson Daniels. For me, watching Minnesota, you go from Jordan McLaughlin to Dyson Daniels, you get way bigger and you get way better. Dyson Daniels is a much more skilled playmaker, probably doesn't put as much pressure on the rim as Jordan McLaughlin does, but he's a lot more consistent defensively than McLaughlin. Gives you some more size and length for your blitzing defense there in Minnesota as well, which they love to do under Chris Finch. So I think Dyson Daniels here just does make a ton of sense. The only bugaboo on him is he just does not shoot the ball well. He's a career 25% three-point shooter with the G League Ignite team. And for me, that is a red flag. I know a lot of people are way higher on this kid than I am. I do not look upon him very favorably, but I do think he makes some sense here for Minnesota, specifically because of the way that they play defense and also what he can help them do with the ball in his hands offensively, leading the second unit when D'Angelo Russell's off the floor. Pick 20, San Antonio Spurs here now. This pick comes from the Toronto Raptors, of course, in that Thaddeus Young trade. And here the Spurs go out and get forward Tari Eason, which I think is a phenomenal addition alongside Jalen Duren. I talked about it earlier. This team is missing athleticism and physicality, and you not only get it in Jalen Duren, you get it here in Tari Eason as well, a very physical 4-man who is very athletic as well. He really helped himself transferring from Cincinnati to now his sophomore season at LSU. Of course, LSU kind of falling into shambles as we speak after Will Wade's firing. They replaced him with a good head coach from Murray State. But for me here, Tari Eason specifically helps San Antonio because he provides that physical element. He's going to be a player who can catch the ball above the rim and can, poster some guys. And you just need that. You need a little bit of that fear element on a roster. I just don't think San Antonio has that right now. They're a very skilled team. They've got a lot of talent there, but they just don't have any physically menacing players. You add 2 of them in this draft with Jalen Duren and Tari Eason, and I think automatically this team becomes way, way better. It gives you another element in transition play. And I think just ultimately, to be a really good basketball team, you need to have some good athleticism. And they got it here with Tari Eason and Jalen Duren in one draft. 21, the Denver Nuggets here now on the board. And again, this is an example of one where I'm not going to overthink it and change up what I mocked last week. I'm going with guard Hugo Besson here from the NBL. He plays for the New Zealand Breakers. And I have a prospect scouting video up of him on the channel. I'll try to put a card for it right here. But if you guys don't know who it is, don't roll your eyes at this pick. It just shows that you're not aware of a really good player, because Hugo Besson is a phenomenal prospect. I'm telling you right now, he's averaging about 15 points a game in the NBL, which is rare. That just doesn't happen. Good players in the NBL that are young typically don't average that many points. And the NBL has been a really good place for NBA prospects. Think about LaMelo Ball. He played over there with the Illawarra Hawks and really helped himself. Then you look at a player like Josh Giddey, who played for the Adelaide 36ers and has been phenomenal in the NBA. Even Jae'Sean Tate played over in the NBL, didn't get drafted, but came overseas here back to America and has had a really nice start of his career with the Houston Rockets. The NBL is a very competitive league, arguably the second best league for basketball in the world. And Hugo Besson's been one of the best players on a really good team over there. So for me, Hugo Besson, he fits every little skill-oriented area that Denver needs. With Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. out, it was clear this team is lacking some offensive firepower around Jokic. And Hugo Besson, one of the best shooters in this class. He's going to be really good off movement. He can catch and let it fly. But he's also able to attack closeouts, get to the rim, finish. He's also got a little bit of playmaking feel to him. So I think for them, they don't need a point guard because of Monty Morris, but I think that they do need another combo guard there, someone who can score the basketball, and Hugo Besson does it well. 22, Memphis Grizzlies here now on the board. This pick comes from the Utah Jazz. And another example here that I think just makes way too much sense. I'm not going to switch it up just for change sake again. That's my MO here. I keep saying it, but it just seems silly to switch something when you think it makes way too much sense. And for me, that's guard Kennedy Chandler here from Tennessee. I actually prefer him over Dyson Daniels, but I think Dyson Daniels is going to get way more love, especially from this point of this draft season up until the draft, because he's about 5 inches taller than Kennedy Chandler, and he's got a way bigger wingspan. So even though Kennedy Chandler is very quick and electric and can get to the rim, and I think his tape is better, a lot of people are going to prefer Dyson Daniels, who's an Australian-born player who played in the G League Ignite team because of his size. But for me, Memphis here, they made it work with smaller point guards in the past. Look at Tyus Jones. His success in Memphis has been huge. He's going to get a nice big contract somewhere at some point just with how he's played, especially when John Morant's been out. So I think here Kennedy Chandler becomes a must pick for Memphis because you need to have a reliable backup point guard behind Ja, and Kennedy Chandler is going to be just like that. 23, Brooklyn Nets here now on the board. And if I'm Brooklyn, there's a few things I'm looking for at this point. I have concerns about Ben Simmons, but here I'm going to look for a forward, Nikola Jovic here from Serbia. And no, that's not Nikola Jokic, it's Nikola Jovic. That is not a typo. This is an actual player and an actual prospect. I know it's crazy. It's going to make the league a little bit more wild having two Nikola Jokic, it's messed up. But here with the Nets, I think getting Nikola Jovic, it does make a lot of sense. You get another forward here who can have a nice impact defensively. I think he's going to be a pretty solid perimeter defender early in his career, moves his feet pretty well. And again, another nice connector piece. I don't think he's going to get the exposure that a guy like Kendall Brown does, simply because Kendall Brown played in America. But with Nikola Jovic, has a lot of the same skill sets, probably a little bit better of a shooter as well, maybe a little bit better of a passer, and has some pretty good length and athleticism as well. He's going to be able to attack closeouts. So for me, Nikola Jovic, probably one of the better secrets in the NBA draft here, because I think a lot of the time he's going to go between picks 17 and 25, but realistically could maybe be worth a lottery selection when it's all said and done. Pick 24, the Milwaukee Bucks here now on the board. And for Milwaukee, there's a few things you could look for. I've been consistently mocking a guard because of the Dante DiVincenzo trade, but they did sign Luka Vildoza. So instead, I'm going here with just a player who I think is going to be a really nice role player and contributor here for a team. And that's forward Trevor Keels from Duke. Plays within himself, attacks the rim with aggression and force. He's tough to get in front of because look at how big and strong his body is. He's got a really nice frame. He's going to be ready for the NBA. And then the one thing here, if you're Milwaukee, you have to consider which teams you have to beat out east to get to the finals every year. And one of those teams is Brooklyn. When they're healthy, you have to have guys to throw at Kevin Durant. And you probably want a physical player like Trevor Keels to maybe try and tire him out over a 7-game season. You're not going to stop Kevin Durant, but you might wear him out a little bit. And Trevor Keels here, I think a player who could be a nice contributor from Milwaukee, has a nice shooting stroke as well. He shot the ball pretty well this past year for Duke. And I think he's a player who's ready to make an impact on a good team. And Trevor Keels, I think, is a really good selection here, 24th for Milwaukee. 25, San Antonio Spurs here now This pick comes from the Boston Celtics in the Derek White trade. And here with this pick, I have him going with forward MarJon Beauchamp from G League Ignite. So he's the third G League Ignite player to go. Some people even look at him as a lottery pick. I don't know if they're aware of his age. He's a little bit older. He's not a spry 19-year-old like a guy like Jaden Hardy is. But what he is a player who has a really good development track record, has improved greatly every single year. Used to go to a junior college. So for me, MarJon Beauchamp is a player who's really helped his draft stock. I don't think was on the radar of really anyone before the season. I was aware of him. I was ready for him to have an impact on G League Ignite, but it's been way higher than I thought it would be. So for me, MarJon Beauchamp, a very intriguing player here. San Antonio, it's about trying to get more physicality and just really smart players. And Beauchamp here is a smart player, knows when to cut, gives you some nice size at the wing spot. And for me, with San Antonio, it's hard to say, oh, we have 3 picks. It's hard to find a third guy here because you already addressed 2 of the biggest needs. So for me, Beauchamp, just a smart player who can do a variety of things, I think makes a lot of sense here for San Antonio. 26, Dallas Mavericks here now, picking at this point. For anyone who is curious, I am a Dallas Mavericks fan, so Mavs fans, hit that like button. Also subscribe to not miss out on more covering the Dallas Mavericks. But here, 26 overall, I have him going with guard Blake Wesley out of Notre Dame. And this is a big switch up because I had been looking at defensive players like Ron Harper Jr., for example, in previous mock drafts. The Mavericks have been winning, though. Blake Wesley was still available at this point of the draft, which I think is a big steal for a team. Blake Wesley is probably going to be a top 20 worthy player. Again, I prefer him over Dyson Daniels, who I had going the top 20, just simply because I think that's the way it plays out. Wesley was not super efficient this past year for Notre Dame, but he was easily their best half-court offensive player and had to do a lot himself. And looking at Wesley here, Mavs fans might be wondering, why would you mock as a guard? We have Dinwiddie, we have Brunson, we have Luka. Yes, currently we do. Jalen Brunson's an unrestricted free agent this offseason. And do I think he comes back to Dallas? Probably. But there's always the chance that a team like Detroit or Orlando or Houston even, or, name Team X, Oklahoma City, any team right now could throw a lot of money at him. And if I'm Jalen Brunson, who's been playing on relatively cheap contracts as a second-round pick, I would want to go where the money is, to be honest. I think when you're an adult and when you're a person who wants to try and make a career, you take the higher-paying job. And for me, it's a real possibility that, Jalen Brunson leaves. And also, if the Mavs are seriously looking into a Rudy Gobert trade, you probably are going to have to attach Spencer Dinwiddie and his salary as well. So it's possible that we could lose either one or both of them in Brunson and Dinwiddie this offseason, which would make Blake Wesley a must draft in this situation. Now it's possible we have all 3 of them going into next season as well, where, Luke is obviously going to be around. It's possible Dinwiddie and also Brunson are still around. So there's a variety of outcomes here. I wanted to switch it up for this mock draft because I do think this is a potential outcome. 27, Golden State Warriors here now on the board. And Golden State, I have them going here with guard/forward Ousmane Dieng from New Zealand. He plays alongside Hugo Besson, who we mentioned at pick 21 for Denver. And Ousmane Dieng, I think, is a perfect fit into Golden State because he's got some good size and length. He's also a pretty skilled ball handler. And I think if there's one thing that Golden State's missing clearly, it's another playmaker. When Draymond Green goes out, I think everyone's underrated Draymond Green's impact for Golden State, and Warriors fans know it best. They know it better than anyone else. Their offenses are very reliant on him. Even though it's a heavy motion offense and a lot of guys touch the ball, Draymond Green's like the ultimate connector piece in the middle, where he finds Steph Curry, his chemistry with Klay Thompson, his ability to throw lobs to bigs. I mean, he kind of makes that whole offense click. And when he's not on the floor, they lose a little bit of that element. So you go with a playmaker here who has similar size to Draymond. He's not going to be nearly the defensive player. He's more of a point guard than he is a forward, but I think he's capable of playing like a forward as well. And with his passing capabilities, I think Golden State needs another playmaker. Of course, everyone's going to wonder, what if they took LaMelo Ball instead of James Wiseman? I understood why they didn't. I still think Wiseman has a nice future in the league. It might just not be with Golden State, but ultimately here you need another connector, offensive guard who can play make for others, and Ousmane Dieng is the perfect grab here for Golden State. 28, we got the Miami Heat here now. At this point, they are back to the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They've had such a great season, and the Heat deserve a lot of credit for that. Eric Spoelstra has been a phenomenal head coach. for that team for over a decade now. And also when you look at this year, he's dealt with a ton of injuries, and this team just keeps winning. So for here, 28th overall, I have them going with forward Johnny Juzang, a player who's all about winning. And he was huge for UCLA. He's their best half-court scorer. And for Miami, if you want to nitpick Miami and say there's one thing that this team's not great at, it's scoring the ball consistently in the half court. Their best go-to scorer right now has been Tyler Hero off the bench, which is crazy that no other team is like that, where their best scorer period is a bench player. So for me, Johnny Juzang, you get another player in on the wing who he's got pretty decent size and length. He's not going to be a terrible defender. He's not going to be a good defender either. But with Miami, they have so much defensive capability already. You don't need to draft another defender here. You need someone who has a little bit of offensive upside and juice to him. And I think Johnny Juzang does bring a little bit of juice to Miami. 29, Memphis Grizzlies here now at this spot. And Memphis has been really good this season again. So I want to give them a lot of credit here. We went with Kennedy Chandler earlier. And I'm going with forward Patrick Baldwin out of Milwaukee. I don't know exactly how to feel about this because Patrick Baldwin, for me, I just am not in love with the player, but I still think he goes in the first round because he's tall and can shoot the basketball, which are two things that a lot of teams are gonna be like, well, those are pretty good pluses. And you know, for Memphis here, I think a lot of the reason why I think Patrick Baldwin does make some sense at this selection is because you can lean a little bit heavier into the Jaren Jackson at center minutes. And, you know, ultimately Steven Adams isn't going to be there for the next 5 years. You know what I mean? So Patrick Baldwin probably finds a long-term role playing the 4 or even maybe the 3 with Jaren Jackson at the center spot, where you maybe put like Brandon Clark next to him as the 4 and then Patrick Baldwin as the 3, and you play really big and tall. And it gives you and you still have enough shooting on the floor with Jaren and Clark and Baldwin that you can survive offensively and kind of defensively be a little sneaky good because of how much length you're presenting. For me, Memphis, this is a weird spot for them to be. You already addressed guard with Kennedy Chandler. You want to find a forward of some type to replace Kyle Anderson long-term, who I think is going to get a nice contract himself. But for me, Patrick Baldwin, probably the most sensible pick here. 30th overall, the final pick of our first round mock draft here. Oklahoma City on the board again. Remember, we went Jabari Smith and Mark Williams earlier. And here we're going to cap it off with forward Wendell Moore Jr. So we go 2 out of 3 for Duke players. And I think this one makes a lot of sense as well. He's a junior himself out of college. But again, I don't have concerns that he's a little bit older. In fact, if you're Oklahoma City, you probably want guys who are a little bit older and, you know, maybe help this team win more. You know, I'm tired of the whole tank thing. You know, I understand why you're doing it this season, trying to help yourself in the lottery, but this is not a sustainable 5-year approach. You can't tank every single year for 5 years and hope that the ping pong balls drop right for you, especially when you have players as good as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey. You want to start winning games ultimately, and Wendell Moore Jr. is going to help you do that. He's an improved playmaker, played a little bit of pseudo point guard this year for Duke. He's a nice connector piece, can shoot the 3 ball well, and plays with physicality. This front court went from very, very weak and inconsistent to all of a sudden having Jabari Smith, Mark Williams, Wendell Moore Jr. That is a good front court with a lot of upside and future potential. And here for Oklahoma City, I feel really good about this mock draft. Hopefully you guys felt good about this mock draft as well. If you did, leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. Again, only 10% of our viewers are subscribed, so please consider, and I hope you guys did enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next utility sports video.